but when you drive it, it's just a four-door Ferrari. It pops and spits and bangs.
There's two Gulf-sponsored cars. One is the most famous racing car in the world, and the other one is a 917 driven by Steve McQueen in the North.
For me, it's the Golf GTI of colours. You can put it anywhere blue, and you're not going to offend people, but you might still have. Hello and welcome to the Car Podcast with Chris Harris and his friends, on which we have reached a milestone, which I was just reminded about a minute before they press record, so I feel like I've had the wind taken out of my solar plexus. This is episode 26, which is half a year of this entertainment that we've brought to you, and you've given us the chance to therapize ourselves in the public forum. So thank you very much for listening. We really do thank you for your support last week with the brilliant Robert on here. But I have to say, this week will be less chaotic. So stay with us. If you want the chaos, we can give you some at a later date, but it'll be a smoother ride. We love you, Robert. So here we go. We'll start with, we've done this before, and this is just to wind me up. Cars you regret selling. Yes, I once owned a 993 GT2 that would radically alter my financial circumstances right now. So we've got it out the way. Can we move on to the next topic? Hardy frickin' har. Chris Cooper, over to you.
Carl, this is going to be quite emotional tonight, actually. There's a couple of topics on here we're going to talk about tonight, which have really made me stop and think about life and what's important and enjoying ourselves and cherishing what we love, people, cars, places we go, places we meet people when we go in our cars. So regrets is quite a loaded word for me at the moment. I was at a funeral today down in St Mawes. A lovely chap who died, he's younger than me, died far too early, much beyond his prime. A wonderful service in a beautiful church, St Just, in the Roseland. Betjeman described it as Britain's prettiest churchyard and church. So regrets is it's quite a big word, isn't it? Well, a bit of emotion tonight. There's two ways of looking at this. There are cars you think you've sold. You think, I wish I hadn't sold that. Kind of miss that car. Like it back. And then there are the 993 GT2s, which are the cars that I really, why did I not see that was going to be worth more money than God has? So, actually, Manish, you and I should probably leave the two of them at this point, because I'm more with you than the two of them. They've had and sold and regretted more cars than you and I will ever have. But if I was to, my little contribution to this debate, and they're sort of cars that I wish I hadn't sold, really, because I do quite like them, and I sort of miss them. And this might spark a debate we have later in our little series, in the second half of our first year of return, of Marmite cars. I had a Range Rover Sport, the previous model, not the current model. A Range Rover Sport, Aintree green, sort of chocolatey brown interior, clear glass, V8 autobiography, silver wheels, silver stuff. And I had that just for about 3 years, just before COVID. It did everything. It absolutely, for me, did everything. It could do a school run. It could blast across the West Country from Hertfordshire down to Cornwall. It could blast across Europe to Spa. That Spa 6 hours we did a few years ago, Chris, which finishes about midnight, the Spa 6 Hour Classic. And if you do the last stint of that race, you've got about 2 and a bit hours to get out the car, get through Parc Fermé, to drive to Eurotunnel, to convince yourself you've got the last Eurotunnel train home rather than the first one in the morning. And I think that night I did my very fastest ever time from the Spa paddock. Well, technically going under the tunnel, that's when you start the clock, that old little single track tunnel at Spa, to clocking into Flexi Plus at Calais, 2 hours, 20 minutes, something. Certainly under 2.5 hours. It was fast.
Good time.
About 100 miles an hour on that last bit, the Jabbercay Strait from Belgium down to France, getting to the English Channel coast. So I sort of do regret selling that, and I keep looking for it, thinking I'd love one of those back, but they've all got too many miles on now.
And a
So
bit
I would
bad.
say again.
Nothing.
And they're a bit chavvy.
It wasn't chavvy. That's the whole
No,
point.
no, but this is another. This is a great question. Which again, I'm going to write it down. At what point does something that was once great become a bit chavvy? It happens.
Yeah,
It
that's a
happens,
good
and it
point.
goes in reverse as well.
If
Yeah,
it's clothing, it's normally about the time I buy it.
yeah. So that's what my submission would be. It wasn't worth very much, and it wouldn't be worth even less now. And it wasn't necessarily the greatest car at everything. It was a bit of everything. But I kind of regret selling that, really. Just at COVID, and I thought, that's what I regret selling.
So before I hand this over to Neil Clifford and we record for 17 hours, can I also suggest that maybe when you were speaking, Chris, it made me realise that the car you regret selling is one that you never quite managed to replace it.
Yes. Yes.
So Neil Clifford, what car do you regret selling? I mean,
I don't know whether I think Chris hit on a nice touch on the word regret. I don't think maybe there is one. I don't. There's always a reason at the time. That's
Yeah.
you've really got to not. You've got to not forget that, because otherwise, it's actually not that logical to ever sell a great car. But there's always a reason. You're either trading up, you're trading down, you're using the money for something more constructive, you don't enjoy it as much as you think you should. There's lots and lots of logical reasons why you sell a car. And I think I can always, even the Lamborghini Countach, which I blamed Harvey for, but actually it's not Harvey's fault. It was my fault, because I hated the car. I picked it up from service, drove it 4 miles, rang him and said, "This car is shit. I'm coming back." And I dumped it with him and said, "Get rid of it. It's doing my head in," because I felt like I was going to die. I wasn't comfortable. My head was like this. I couldn't see out the back. I wasn't enjoying it. Of course, now I look back, I sold it for 180 grand and now it's worth 750 grand. What a plonker. But at
How
the
long had you
time,
had it for?
a couple of years. Hadn't driven it much. It never started. It was always a pain in the arse. Those cars need to be driven. If you leave it for 3 months, it was going to be a nightmare. So there was lots of logical reasons for that sale. The only one that I do regret, but not exactly the specific car, because the specific car was a bit of a dodgy spec, really, was the 918. I really, really, I know it sounds all a bit too knobby, my bloody cars, but I really did love the 918, even though my car was non-YSAG, but with YSAG wheels and YSAG upgrades, and it had acid delete, which was quite cool, but it wasn't the right acid delete, because someone had done acid delete and then done yellow, so it had yellow piping. So it was all a bit of a funny 918. But you know what? Even a shit 918 is just a fantastic car. It's like, I don't know, a shit Samosa is great. Do you know what I mean? There are things that are just really good, even if they're crap.
Yeah.
And the 918 was that. And I would love to have the absolute balls and confidence to daily a 918, because I think you couldn't really, or maybe you couldn't in London. Maybe if you were some sort of Swiss high-end doctor living in Gstaad, it would be fine. I'm not so sure driving through Camden at 7 a.m. every morning, you can, underneath the Caledonian Road, you couldn't really be in a 918. It'd just be too much. But the
It would
918
get
for me,
swallowed by the potholes.
it's just a fantastic car, and will not probably ever be topped by Porsche. So yeah, that would, and I have got a long list of cars that I wish I still owned, but I think that is different to what I regret.
Yes. That's a good distinction. Why did you sell it in the end?
I traded it for a 275.
Wow.
Is that the ugly one?
Yeah, which I've now sold. So it went as a deal on a 275. You could follow the man maths I think
No, you
that
can. That's
you
yeah,
could, that started at the Lancia Delta Integrale, that deal, about 7 years
Yeah.
before.
yeah.
There's some mad. If you laid out those deals of the cars connected to other cars, it can go on forever.
That's not mad at all. That's magical.
I'm not really saying that a Lancia Integrale turned into a 275, but in some respects,
Eventually,
yeah,
Yeah, it
eventually,
did.
yeah.
You flipped it into a 275.
Well,
Manish, and I don't say this in an arch way. Which cars do you regret selling?
this is a guy who owns two cars and hasn't seen his second car. So, I mean, I think I'm going to turn this round. Will
Yes.
I regret selling either my Audi A4 Avant, which is now 18 years old and has just done 40,000 miles, or will I ever sell Lola? And if I sell Lola, will I regret selling her? And I think this has got to be the shortest answer ever. I'm never selling the Audi and I'm never selling Lola. There it is.
There you go.
Was
That's all
the
we need to
Audi
know.
your first car, though, Manish? Surely not.
Yeah, no, it literally was. It literally was. Whenever I was in America, I would always drive one of Dad's cars. So that was easy. And if you are basically a medic in central London, to have a car is a bit of a nightmare. As a junior doctor, some of my mates did, especially when they locumed or they went on training rotations up north or something. It was great for them to have a car. But I have to be honest, public transport and, later when I could just about afford them, taxis were the way forward. And I'll tell you, even the way that I got my Audi was we used to go and visit my wife's sister, and the nearest railway station was Bicester North. And I'll never forget it. Darcy was one, and we were coming back, and he was in his pram on the platform, and I was surrounded by about 10,000 people with 20 carrier bags each because there's Bicester Village. And I
Yeah.
had no idea what Bicester Village was until that day. And we got onto the train. No one stood up, for the woman with the baby. We were just on this really packed train surrounded by bags of tat as far as I could see. And I got home and I literally, on Monday, I phoned Audi and I ordered the car online. And it came from Germany 8 weeks later. And that was that.
So
I was
your
literally,
first
I was
car,
going to get rid of it.
you were 38 years old when you bought your first car.
Let's do the math. So that would have been in the year 2006. You're quite right. Yes, exactly. I was 38 when I bought my first car.
So
What
would you
am I
talk
doing?
to us about any other regrets you have in life?
I've talked to you about a more recent one.
Yeah, but you should have bought more cars. We would, what cars would you love to have bought that you didn't? Maybe
Yeah,
that's the.
I
Do
thought you
you
were going
know
to say
the,
that, which was which cars do you regret not having bought?
Yes. Yes.
there are two. There are really two. Ford Escort XR3i convertible.
Yeah.
I'll,
Okay. Lucky
I'll go to
escape.
my
No,
I'll
it's
go to
good.
my
Good.
grave wanting that car.
Early ones
I,
rubbish.
I
Yeah.
I wanted it in black with a red stripe down
Yeah.
the side. That's what I wanted. Someone once said that was the neurosurgeon's car. I'm not sure. Chris has got the kind of, and I had the chav car look about him. But
No.
it's true, that car was, at the time, it was absolutely perfect. And the other one, it's the, and I might get one. We were talking about this, but I think to get an absolutely beautiful 60s Alfa Romeo Spider, like the one in The Graduate,
Boat tail.
Boat tail, that's it. The boat tail, they're the two cars that God, I love those.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fascinating, this, isn't it? Because the wording of this was quite ambiguous. Because it was, what is regret? And Neil and all three of you have demonstrated the ability to interpret that. And I suppose I now realise that you never regret selling a car if you're a car enthusiast because it's part of a process. And as long as it's part of the process, and the process could be that you're going up or down, but your life's changing. Because I view these things as temporary. I've never bought a car expecting it to be with me forever. I never have. And I think anyone that does is probably has a different view of the world than I do. I think if you've had a sort of distress sale or you've been forced to sell something, then that's difficult. And I think if you tried to get too clever and you traded in a way that you thought was going to be life changing and it turned out not to be, then that can be difficult. I personally have owned, I can think of at least 3 or 4 cars that I'm representative of the person that sold them at the wrong time, but they were the right time for me at the time because I didn't have the ability to hold on to them. They were just so. How many people have owned a 4-litre RS that they didn't get? I think I made 10 grand on a 4-litre RS. I've had 993 RS. I've had a couple of 993 RSs. I think one of the best ever sale price achieved for one of those was 65,000 from me.
Yeah. They went to
And you couldn't give them away. And then there's the famous 993 GT2, which must be worth thick under £2 million now. But at the time when it was 150,000, its value terrified me. And also, I've said so many times in interviews, I once I decided to not take it to Chepstow Tesco's once because I thought I don't want someone opening their door into the side of it. And at that point, it's a chocolate fireguard for me. A car has to be usable. And if I'm not going to use it, I'm not really interested. So, therefore the cars that you sell this is unbelievable to the audience, I would have thought. It's not about money. Because I can't really lose sleep over that. It's just part of the process of life.
Yeah.
I was destined to always be slightly in the shit for money because that's what idiots like me do, and I love it. It's part of life. So if I said I regretted selling a car, it would be something like a 205 XS that I never managed to replace it. I probably if I plotted the point at which I felt as comfortable or happy behind the wheel as I did from my 1990. No, I had a 1988 on an E, red 205 XS. I replaced it with a 106 XSI. That wasn't as good. I replaced that with a 306 XSI. That wasn't as good. I had a 145 Cloverleaf. That wasn't as good. I then had a Lotus Elise. That was as good. So I was 5 cars down. Maybe we should plot how many cars down the line it took you to find the same thing.
Snakes and ladders. Cars, snakes and ladders.
I think
That's a good game.
Chris's example was very good because for me that made me think. So he regrets selling it. Not that he's standing in the corner crying every time he sees someone else in a Range Rover Sport, but he's thinking the car I bought after that didn't do the job as well, or didn't. I didn't feel as good in it. And it could be anything down to how soft the armrest is, or how good the radio is, or the colour of the shade of brown of the interior was not. It's just interesting, isn't it? The things we fixate on.
Yeah,
but it's interesting that it's that point of departure. I know that people must listen to this sometimes, or partners or friends. People they get awfully worked up about stuff about cars. There is a car, and Chris, you and I have both driven it, where the sale of the car is something that still frustrates me.
Oh yeah,
and it's the Caterham R400 that we raced in the 2002 Nürburgring 24-hour race.
Yeah, I should have bought that.
And it was by far, easily, Caterham Car's greatest motorsport achievement. Finished 11th overall in 2002 Nürburgring 24 hours. And we both know Simon Nern, who owned and ran the company at the time, and if Simon listens to this in Australia, and Simon, I love you to bits, but why did you do that? And Chris, you and I had the chance a few years later to buy about the stars didn't align. On the 20th anniversary of that race, so 2-3 years ago now, Autosport magazine did a retrospective on that event. We were all interviewed, and Chris was, and Peter Haynes, and Clive Richards, and all the people, the Minister of Power people, and all the people behind the scenes who made that project happen. And I went to the then leadership of Caterham Cars to say, you got to buy that back. You've got a beautiful new factory in Dartford, new ownership, new leadership. Where is the car in the foyer of your factory? The car. It's owned by some bloke in Germany. Yeah, can't really justify buying it. You just thought, God, that's so frustrating. So there's a frustration of cars that shouldn't have been sold.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's I suppose it's a subject I instinctively ignore because I like to just I want to be excited about the next thing and not
Yeah,
worry
yeah.
about the last thing. It's
Yeah.
funny, isn't it? I still even in a world where it can be easy to be negative. Our next subject we're about to move on onto is the 30 grand shed, which is ridiculous. No such thing as a £30,000 shed. But it's only when you
Yes.
start looking you realise how much shit there is out there for us to get excited about. There's just at £30,000,
I
you've
know.
days to waste. Days. It's
It's much
wonderful.
more enjoyable actually looking than actually buying the bloody thing.
Of course it is. We know
Yeah.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. On that note, Neil Clifford, you got £30,000, or the algorithm has allowed you £30,000 this week. What are you having?
Ooh.
Well, Jerry.
Oh God.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, right. We're going to buy a cool bloody Jaguar. Is what we're going to
Okay.
buy. And who can guess what it is? It's a, you know what? It's a bit. It's like all Jaguars. They get cooler with age, don't they? The F Type,
Yeah.
V8, because you want those big fat exhaust pipes. The
Yeah.
5 litre V8, V8S. I don't know whether they're all V8S actually. 27,995, special paint, ivory leather, upgraded Meridian high vi, 35,000 miles, full service history. Bob's your uncle. Look at that.
Is that a
Ooh.
VAS? That's a VAS.
VAS, not an R. There's an R one.
No, don't want the R. You don't
No,
want the R.
yeah, I've deliberately, on purpose, by accident, not chosen the R,
Well done.
and because I couldn't get one for 30 grand.
Thank
But
God.
look at that. It's bloody
That
fantastic.
VAS, I thought I had the winning car tonight. I've just realised I bloody haven't because it's that.
I think, honestly, my mate Paul had one. They sound like thunder.
Yeah.
They're super pretty. As always with Jaguars, the first version's better than the second one because they
Yeah.
sort of fuck it up on the second one.
They mess up, which is why you don't want the R.
They
Ah.
fiddle it out because someone's got to justify their job, and they fuck it up because the
Yeah.
first one there was more attention made, and it's just prettier.
We've had this. Yeah, you're right.
It's you think about Jaguar, they're always better the first one, but that honestly, you just bloody hope that they're right, but clearly they're not right with this strategy. The wind's changed on them already, hasn't it? With this bloody
It's
big,
already changed on them. They're on the wrong side of the race course.
that's what a Jaguar should look like. Sort your
Also,
shit
Yeah.
out, Gary.
can I offer one thing about the F Type? I'm almost to the point where I'm going to have to get one for the summer. But there's something about the way that those two hoops and the hood sits is so well integrated on the F Type. It's about as clever a piece of stowage as
Look,
I've seen in
Yeah.
any car.
if
Yeah.
that was a Porsche, we'd be saying that's the coolest Porsche ever made. Actually, think about
Yeah.
if it had a Porsche badge, a V8 convertible, pretty as hell, lovely wheels. I mean, it's a tremendous bloody car, and I challenge anyone to beat me on the sheds.
We're going to struggle today. Manish, you're allowed to attempt.
I'm going to attempt, but I think that may well be unbeatable. It's another car that I regret not having bought, and I could not believe you could get one for £30,000. In fact, £29,950. It's a 1984 Mercedes 500 SL, and I think
129. Move
No,
your,
what?
your screen a bit.
Ooh,
Oh yes,
107.
Bobby Ewing.
that's
107.
beautiful. Yeah, exactly. Bobby Ewing, 1984 Bobby Ewing. But look at the interior on this. I mean, this is 78,000 miles. And, is that not beautiful?
Yeah.
Real
Tartans.
Manish is holding up what they call MB Tech, which is
Yeah.
it's a sort of heavy leatherette vinyl and a cloth insert, but in
Yeah.
a dark blue colour. It's an absolutely classic Mercedes interior.
Is that
So
on
just
sale,
tell me
Manish,
what-
at the SL shop?
I'm sorry?
No,
Is
it'd be
it for
60
sale
grand
at the
if it was.
No, it's a private sale. It's a private sale. I
private
found it
sale?
on Piston Head. And it just, this thing just sounds gorgeous. They've got a full service history. They've got the MOTs. They've got everything. I've looked at every single angle of dangle on this. And I think, my God, my shed I mean, I know I went a little off piste last week with a car I'll never ever be able to use.
Yeah, that didn't go very well down very well, did it? No.
I think Bentley, then ignore the and then this Mercedes SL. Come on, this is a
That's a good
shame.
choice.
I just see you in a 107 completely.
Exactly. So Neil actually sent me a rather sweet text on Sunday saying, "Right, I've been thinking, you need to get yourself a bit of a cool daily." And he suggested a Boxster, but I'm just wondering whether, Neil, I could find either a 350 or 420 or a 500 SL.
Easy.
Could you daily those? Do you think if you got
Yeah.
a really good one and a good mechanic, what do you think?
Yeah.
Take it to Roger Edwards.
Yeah.
Go on.
Roger Edwards, Amersham.
Give it to
Sit
Paul.
around.
Yeah, he's gone down to Chichester, but he's great.
Has he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that
I just
500
love
SL?
that every week. Wouldn't that just be a beautiful car just
would
to take
be.
out Friday to Sunday?
Does it have the rear little rubber lip spoiler on the boot, that one, or is that pre that one?
I'm just having. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
You can
Okay, that's nice.
You can totally daily a 107.
Yeah.
So I love, and remember, daily for me is drive to Soho from Belsize Park, and we're talking about
Oh, it's even cooler.
1 mile, aren't we?
Black leather jacket. Oh,
Stella 456.
No,
Chris Cooper,
No.
you've now got to beat two fantastic convertibles.
I mean, Neil is right. This is very, very fertile, creative territory, the 30K vehicle. And thinking about, I said it's been emotional this week. So, and in part because I've been just so completely, I was supposed to be on holiday today, but I've been back to back since about 6 o'clock this morning. So I have engaged the services of both of my boys, Finn and Cameron, and they both had really, really good suggestions. Some of which we'll come back to in future weeks, because I think there's some slightly better price points on these cars, but there's so much territory here. The V8S is really interesting. One of the reasons why I love that V8S, Neil, and I think you would too, is that it has much of the mechanicals of the Range Rover Sport Supercharged.
I've had one.
V8S.
Well, I had a Project 7.
Okay, well that's different. Yeah, very. Yeah,
Different. But it's that
Yeah,
engine. It's a magnificent engine.
it is. It is that engine. So, any other circumstances, I've definitely got the winning car. It's a Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio.
Oh, bollocks. Yes, you win.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Red, winner.
Yeah.
Chicken dinner. 51,000 miles, 69 plate. Exactly £30,000, spelled with 2 G's. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we're all winners.
I haven't done one yet. That's
This week.
that's a bit good. But I'm
Billy
now going to
suggested
link.
that.
I'm now going to link the first subject in with this subject in with Mr. Cooper's choice. In the autumn of last year, I was toying with what saloon car to buy to cover a few miles, and I nearly managed through man maths to justify one of those Alfa Romeos because I think they're wonderful cars, and I will own one at some point. The other car I was looking at, I drove very near where Chris lives at the lovely Seymour Pope, which is my choice tonight, which is a Maserati Quattroporte 4.7 GTS, which makes no sense whatsoever. On paper,
What a choice.
it's no difference to the S, but when you drive it, it's just a four-door Ferrari. It pops and spits and bangs, doesn't go very fast. You suspect it'll complete a journey as and when it feels like it. But I love that shape of Quattroporte. It's a Luca car as far as I'm concerned. And I absolutely love them. And I ended up buying an Alpina D3 instead, which I absolutely love. And which, by the way, is with its second temporary owner at the moment. So it spent a long time with my mate Andrew, who came over from America. And then a very good friend of mine, Gareth, my oldest buddy from school, he managed to, at the ripe old age of 50, to snap his Achilles tendon, which is not an injury you want to have, as Manish will tell you. He's had a surgery and had it rebuilt and needed an automatic. So the Alpina currently live with my mate Gaz. I haven't seen the freaking thing for about 3 months. I absolutely love it and I miss it. But I look at this Maserati Quattroporte that's for sale still. It's the one with the red leather. We've all been looking at it for ages. It's been there about a year and a half. Yeah. Who's going to blink first, boys and girls? Because it's magnificent at 30 grand. But I have to concede that the winner tonight for me is Chris Cooper. We should all own one of those. We
What
all
about
have
you?
to own one of those Julia quadrifolios, don't we?
They are amazing. Yeah.
Have you owned one, Neil?
No, I was lent
I
one
haven't.
from Mayo, actually, being an influencer.
Why have you not owned one?
I just didn't get round to it, really.
No, exactly.
No reason. And I've got a very good mate, Mark, who owns the very, very posh one, the sporty one.
Yeah, the AM.
Yeah, the AM, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous thing. So we should all own one
We should.
Yeah.
Okay, so
before we die.
a leggy early one in the trades, low 20s, and what a car!
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we're moving on to our colours. The next in an occasional series discussing colours. Tonight is the colour blue.
Oh,
I'm going to start off with a bit on this, okay? I've owned more blue cars than I have any other colour. I worked it out. I've owned more blue cars because I think blue is the most versatile colour on a car.
yeah.
Because I think blue can be dignified and luxurious and low key, and it can also be exciting, and it can be youthful, and it can be a bit shocking. There's one manufacturer that does blue better than any other manufacturer, and I'm going to read just 4 of their shades that I hope: Wang,
Porsche.
Riviera,
Yes.
Mexico, Shark, and Midnight. That is all you need to know about blue. Neil Clifford's holding something up there. He's got some blue up there.
I found a website called PTS Explorer, which is a Porsche little thing with all of the blues on, and you're dead right.
Oh, there we go. So for those that don't know, PTS is an acronym that stands for Paint to Sample, which is Porsche's way of saying that within reason they'll paint a car any colour. Actually, there are limits, but as long as they can get the paint code, they will do it for you. And there's some wonderful shades. Some of the ones I've just listed there are often PTS on certain cars, but I'll come back to it, but I love blue on a car. It's really everything. Neil, you're chomping at the bit.
No, I completely and utterly agree. I think it's I think a very sporty car in blue, dark blue. Well, I'm biased, but I think blue does everything really. I mean, dark green maybe is rivals it to me, but I think it's super chic. It's understated. But you can do light blue, super cool. You can do mid blue. This I literally found this tonight. I've never seen this little. I don't know whether it's a special Porsche thing or whether it's someone knocked it up, but it's got all of the PTS colours.
Can we put a link up to people? Has it got a website?
I think it is a website, ptsexplorer.com.
Okay, we'll get a link up for you now.
Lager blue, Albert blue, Ancona blue, Riviera blue, yachting blue, as you would know, Mr. Harris, azure blue. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of blues Porsche do. It's just, it's just bloody brilliant, isn't it? And even when you go light with their very old 356 colours or club blue, that lovely rare colour they do in the. I mean, it goes on and on. A cobalt, even the cobalt. I mean, a GT3 Mark 1 in cobalt. I think there's one of them. There was that website, wasn't there, that listed all the colours of the 996 GT3, and I think there was one green one, which I own, that Viper green one. Idiot, sold it. Another regret. Don't really regret, but regret. Cobalt blue metallic. And I'm not really, really big on metallics, but I think in blue it's fine. In lapis, midnight.
But for me, it's the Golf GTI of colours. You can put it anywhere blue, and you're not going to offend people, but you might still have the capacity to surprise them. Manish, how do you feel about blue?
No, I think it is the colour. All of my shirts are blue, apart from one white one. That will tell you everything you need to know. Every kind of check, every kind of gingham, every kind of Prince of Wales. I think it's funny because I don't think you can talk about, with cars anyway, anything that's as versatile in terms of shades. Can you think of 30 shades of green or 30 shades of red or 30 shades of grey? You can.
Yeah. Yes.
I was just thinking about Ferrari. There were two blues that absolutely bite me. Potsy and Tour de France. And if you just think about the difference between the two of those, or a friend of mine has a 275 in powder blue. And I challenge you to find a car that's
Lovely.
as arresting as that. You
Yeah.
just see a Ferrari 275 in powder. In fact, it's got a name. Do you know it, Neil? It's an old Ferrari color, actually. And
I've
I've
seen the car.
forgotten.
I think it was a DK, but I don't know the color. I'm sure someone will tell us.
Yes, so well, if I find it, we'll put it in the guide. And actually, I always thought that the 456 I would get would be blue because the vast majority are Potsy. Actually, there are a few Tour de France.
Right-hand drive, the majority are TDF. There's very
Yeah.
few Porsche right-hand drive cars.
Okay, but I mean, I've seen them. I think it is way the classiest, as a friend would say. It's way the classiest color. And also just think about the interiors that go with blue. Think about the interiors that go with black. Think about the interiors that go with red, and then think about the interiors that go with blue.
Yeah,
With
that's a
blue,
good
you've just got a canvas, haven't you? You could
Yep.
almost make anything work. Almost make anything work. It's a stunning color for a car.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chris Cooper.
So, under heading my delegation this week, I sent this to Cameron earlier on, and I said, "Blue, what do you think?" And he wrote back straight away with, "Blue, for the want of a better word, is good. Blue is right. Blue works."
Yep.
So those of you who remember Wall Street, Gordon Gekko,
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
I thought it was quite clever. I do think blue is... all of my clothes are blue. It took a long time for Lynn, my wife, to be able to get me out shopping when I didn't automatically say, "Have you got that one in blue?" Or, "How many different shades of blue can your work shirts or your..." And I've kind of regressed a bit. I'm now mostly blue.
Mm.
So it is that a male thing?
Well, I'll tell you
Is
what.
that-
I'll throw something in there. If you go to Italy, which I think the men dress the best in the world, and you go to a night at the San Siro and watch Inter Milan, and I've got a
Yeah.
good friend, Massimo, that does that. There's 80,000 very chic men that are beautifully manicured with lovely beards and hair. And
Yeah.
everyone is in navy blue. It's like a uniform.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to French, but French men wear black. You go to Milan and everyone's in blue. And
Yeah.
it's just, for me, lovelier.
Yeah.
Navy is gravy, is what they say in the fashion world.
Can I say it again?
Navy is gravy.
Navy is gravy.
It
Navy is
sells.
gravy.
People
There
like it.
used to be. I mean, it's interesting that one, isn't it? Because I think if I try, I am the antithesis of cool or trendy or fashionable. To me, clothes are things that cover my body. I'd prefer to have them in blue rather than going out naked.
Yes.
But that's how. And in the trade, though, interestingly, a few years ago, would have been in the 2000s, I got involved with some aspects of the Motability Scheme, which we should probably talk about. It's a peculiarly British thing that provides vehicles in a government-funded scheme for people who have accessed disability benefits. Come back to that another time. But in the 2000s, a lot of cars that were being remarketed, going to auction, were blue, and not great blues from Vauxhall or whatever. And they were known in the trade as Doom Blue.
May I just
And
present this graph? Because it links beautifully to what you're saying. This is a graph that I found on Instagram today.
That's
of
exactly it.
the colours per year.
Per year.
And we are a bunch of boring bastards at the moment
Oh
because
God.
80% of cars are either grey, white, or black that
That's
are sold in
dreadful.
the United Kingdom. And peak blue, 1999.
It's about
There,
right.
yeah, there is
Yeah,
1999.
that figures.
And
That
it's exactly
literally
what,
figures.
yeah, peak blue. And look at green, look, and look red. So the
Yes.
90s, we were frankly more interesting.
All
And we
right,
need
No,
guys.
green and
On Thursday, when I pick up Lola, who knows a good spray shop?
I do, of course.
Right.
Well,
So
you're
we're
going to
going to
send
get.
it.
Why
You're
don't we
going to
just spend
shunt
a
it on the
few
way
thousand
home.
quid turning her blue now? Why not?
It's very interesting that. We'll post that up on the little thingy-majig.
I like
Well,
that. That's very good. That's very good.
I think there should be some sort of government department that is is charged with keeping life interesting. It's like Ministry of City Walks, but there should be some sort of discount on a new car if you order it in pink or primrose yellow, or just something that will make a passerby go, "Did you see that?"
Yes.
Because it makes life so much better. The landscape of our lives is improved through colourful cars.
I think if I refer to my little world of the fashion industry, the only thing you can predict is things are going to be different in the future. It's the only thing you know. So if sneakers are really hot, in a year's time you're going to be down on sneakers because they're not as hot as they were. Now let's hope, and that's what keeps you sort of sharp and anxious and paranoid and all other sorts of things in my job. Let's hope colours is the same. There will be a rejection. There is always a rejection.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
we'll all be
So
trying
everyone needs to order their cars in either Mexico or Riviera
Yes.
because they're two of the best. I think Riviera on a 993 RS, I'll close with as being one of the great car colour combos. A Riviera
Yes.
993 RS. First time I saw one, I was like, that's a knee wobbler for me.
I agree with that. Not like it wouldn't on a 991 for me.
Exactly. Right. So let's move on now. Now this is a punchy subject. We've covered it before. We attempted to. I think we all ducked away from the truth. Dash cams. Where do we stand on dash cams? Again, I'm going to start with something about this because I'm totally confused by dash cams. I'm inherently mistrusting of anyone that wants to set out to film any journey in their life because I think if you start out wanting to film things, you'll probably look for things to film, and without wanting to or not, your behaviour will be controlled by the fact you have a camera on board. And I'm not sure you're a great citizen, or any of us is a great citizen if that's what we want to do. However, how many times have you finished a journey when you thought, I wish I had a bloody dash cam on that, either just to record it for myself or to share with the wider world to prove that I thought that person wasn't doing the right thing, whatever it is. I am not judgmental. I'm a totally flawed human being, and I will not go around opining about most things in life because I just don't care that much. And also, I'm not perfect. But the dash cam I find fascinating. I suppose I'd love a dash cam to help understand the behaviour of road users of different vehicles or pedestrians or cyclists, because sometimes I'm just still completely baffled. I thought even if I apply my understanding of the laws of the road, I'm like, I don't get that. So maybe I could play it back and understand the scenario. But the dash cam weaponized, as it now is a really interesting thing. And I'm not sure it's necessarily a very good thing unless you're an insurance underwriter. And even then, I think it adds some confusion. Chris Cooper, help me understand this.
It's a really interesting one, this, isn't it? If we didn't have dash cams, TikTok's market capitalization would collapse. I'm honest enough to concede that there are aspects of my own driving that I wouldn't wish recorded on a hard disk somewhere. But I'm savvy enough to have forgotten when those occasions might have been. Because I'd rather not think about them. I think for young people, so Sarah, our practice manager, gave me a lift to the station in her daughter's car last week, and it had a dash cam. And I said, "Oh, you got a dash cam?" She said, "Yes." Her daughter and the insurance company had insisted on a dash cam. And I thought, that's probably quite sensible. And lots of manufacturers nowadays, there's probably on the configurator for BMW or Porsche, you can now tick the dash cam, the manufacturer's own dash cam thing. Yeah, you can. Land Rover's got the same thing, I think, as well. You can do all those kind of things.
Isn't that amazing, actually? So just a quick point there. you very soon you will not be able to get OEM sat nav systems because they're phasing them out because everyone uses Android or Apple. But you can have an OEM dash cam built in.
Yes.
Who'd have thought that 10 years ago?
I know,
You can
weird.
you can have cameras to record your activities, but no sat nav.
I mean, if you took the view that everybody had them, would it change behaviour? Because there's one theory of social or group behaviour or theory, I'm sure. Better students than me, that's everyone, will write in and suggest this to us. But there must be a hypothesis that says if everybody had them and everybody knew that everybody had them, then you'd always think the whole time, I know I'm being watched. I'll just get angry or irritated or frustrated or impatient internally rather than externally. But then you see on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, incidents from all around the world where an irate lady person or gentleman person exits their motor vehicle to remonstrate with the driver of another motor vehicle. And usually it's on the camera, or some other regional European or international dialect saying the same thing. It doesn't seem to make any difference to the smashing of the wing mirror or the pounding, or in some cases, how many rounds of ammunition are expended in dealing with the matter there and then without waiting for the wheels of judicial analysis to have considered it.
Neil Clifford, thoughts?
My brain isn't big enough to do the study of human behaviour,
No.
if you know what I mean. I'll share with you my personal experience. Not always. You choose a couple of cars that you think, I'm definitely this is going to be my daily car for the next 5 years. I love this car so much that I'm going to do 40,000 miles in it and it's really going to be amazing. I'll fit a dash cam, because wouldn't that be sensible and logical? And just in case someone hits me up the arse or someone does something, I've got a recording and I'm going to. And so I do that. And then I never know how to use it. The lead keeps falling out. There's some shit app with it that you get to use once, and then obviously you forget the password, so you can never get into it again. And then the bloody thing starts talking to you.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, the thing keeps talking to you. SD card full. SD card full. You fucking turn the car on, and this woman or man is so you then just pull the lead out. You're pissed off listening to this thing, and then you've just got a broken dash cam in your car that
Ballast.
even if you ever wanted to record the fake insurance claim because someone's banged you up the bottom and at the Staples corner, or events that
Is that a metaphor?
no, that has happened to me on for another podcast. The dash cam's not working anyway because I've forgotten the password. The SD card's full. It's sort of slightly come off the windscreen. So I suppose is what I'm saying is I'm not organised and diligent enough to be able to manage the strategy of the dash cam.
But does that also not expose something that I thought I tried to touch on at the beginning, which it makes you understand or scrutinise the reasons why you have one in the car, and your reasons for having one are not great enough for you to really put up with the hassle. You don't want that to be part of the process of your life. You don't want to be taking your SD card out every day, looking at your footage, whatever it's just not what you want to be doing. So
no chance am I organised enough.
No.
I'd lose it. I'd put it in my wallet and then I'd say, I'm going to look for that SD card. It's gone. It's immediately disappeared. With all the Bic pen tops and the socks, that place where you lose things, there's a million SD cards in there, and I would never be able to find the thing ever again.
No. Manish, thoughts?
Well, I always thought this podcast was really, from the big subtext of this podcast, was freedom. And freedom, as I say, it's a two-way street, isn't it? You want your freedom. You want to give other people their freedom. And so, synonym for freedom perhaps is respect. And I think spying on each other all the time isn't particularly respectful. I get pissed off at the amount of dog shit in Belsize Park. I may get really pissed off the amount of people who do not pick up their dog's poo. I have been so tempted on many an occasion to just go and stick a GoPro on every lamppost. But I don't particularly fancy being Stalin. And I think that I think sort of everybody having their own dash cam. I mean, look, I understand if you're a professional taxi driver, if you're an Uber driver, you do lots of late night pickups.
Yeah, I think that's
You're picking up women, you're picking up guys from nightclubs. I get that. That you can have a moment in your taxi which is really, really horrible, and you may have to go to the police, and that's fair enough. But I think your average citizen spying on your other average citizen is really unpleasant. And that's my kind of big view of it. Because what do we do next then? Do we all buy fake parrots and put them on our shoulders with a little GoPro of them and walk around just spying on each other, walking down Oxford? I mean, I think it's pernicious. It's really, really unpleasant. I think, and who does it suit? I mean, who's sitting there compiling all of this data? Because presumably you upload your dash cam onto the cloud, because it doesn't just sit on an SD card. I wish it did, Neil, but I would imagine 99% of people upload this, and that means it's completely accessible to someone.
That's where I'm going.
You'd be pretty naive to think that people don't spy on you and everything's so perfectly encrypted. No one knows what you're doing. And I just think give people some space and some freedom, because that's, I think, one of the things that makes people angry is the idea that they're being observed all the time. What if somebody said to you, look, I've got this plan. It's we're just going to put a GoPro in everybody's toilet. I promise we won't spy on you while you do a poo and read your Autosport, but we're going to do it anyway. I would imagine we'll be a nation of constipation before you know it.
Go poo.
And that's the kind of, it is the kind of point, isn't it? Why do you want to spy on your fellow road users? If they do something wrong, fill out an application, fill out your insurance form, call the police, be reasonable. I'm against them. I'd like to see them outlawed.
I never saw you as today's George Orwell.
Oh, sorry.
No.
But actually, you're spot on. You're spot on. I think that's great thinking. And there is an example of this, which is you've made me stop think about. In current motor racing, certainly in the UK, many series, almost most series now, mandate onboard forward-facing and rear-facing cameras. And you've got to have them. You've got to have an SD card in. And if there's an issue, then the SD card's collected together. So all of the days of she said, he said, and did a marshal see something, in theory, it's all gone. Because there's lots of data, lots of every camera angle for multiple cars. Has it changed anything? Has it made racing happier? Not a sausage. In fact, I would say that the angst and the tension is now even worse, because everyone walks around the paddock with their SD card saying, have you seen this? I need to show this to somebody. I think, God, can we just go back and say, I know there'll be some incidents where there might be safety be involved, but I think that's a really good little essay you submitted there, Manish. I really like that.
We don't want to be Winston. Who was the guy in 1984?
Yeah, Winston.
That guy.
Yeah.
Winston and Julia. We don't want that life.
No.
One thing I was going to say about, as you know, I'm probably not a huge Alain Prost fan, but one of the things that I most liked about, the accident that he and Senna had in 1990 when, frankly, Senna turfed him off at 155 miles an hour. It wasn't very edifying. It was not the best moment in Senna's life, and I think he was ashamed. But Alain Prost said something, and it was there's a brilliant quote. He said, I have the video of the accident here, but I don't think there's any point in showing people this because it won't change a thing. And I love that. It's a one Prost quote that I absolutely loved. I've got the video. Don't change anybody's mind. And I think he's making a deeper point there. I think he is making a deeper point there. We drive because it makes me feel wonderful. From next Thursday, I'm going to feel even more wonderful. And when Neil finds me my daily, I'm going to feel even more wonderful. And the idea that, I'm logging every minute of my day, it's not going to make me feel wonderful.
No,
Is that back to the bathroom again?
Well, exactly.
Well, I'm telling you, I mean, honestly, Neil's so pleased with GoPoo, and I am very pleased with him as well, because I'll still be chuckling at that halfway through our next segment. Now, I'm going to have to tell my learned colleagues we're going to cut one out tonight, because I've got to get off somewhere, because I'm really under a bit of time pressure. We're going to move to our two-car garage, and we'll share our first off-road experiences next week's podcast, if you don't mind, because we've gone through the full gamut of human behaviours tonight, haven't we? Really, from regrets to being observed by ultimately the police state. So we'll settle this down with a two-car garage that is again a little bit totes emotion, if I'm honest with you. It goes as follows. My eyesight's so poor now I can barely read these things on my telephone. This is from Hamzamar1. How about adding an interesting twist to the two-car garage? Each of you could choose two cars you'd leave behind as a legacy for your children. One car should be a motivation car, something they can drive on days when they need a boost, whether it's a sports car, classic, or something else inspiring. The other car should reflect your own personality, something that reminds your children of who you were, and it must have enough space for all of your kids. This could add a personal and emotional touch to the discussion. This should bring a nice balance of inspiration and nostalgia to the conversation. You basically should be running the podcast, not me, boss. What a great suggestion, and so beautifully expressed. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to go straight to Chris Cooper, please.
I said at the beginning this is quite an emotional sort of theme to this evening's podcast. Long story for another time, but last weekend I found myself visiting the house I grew up in from the age of about 6 to 22. And I never actually left it because I was away at university, my parents sold it and they moved out. I knew it was kind of go, but it was suddenly it was gone and it was all gone. And it's down in Kent. And again, long story as to how I found myself, but I found myself there on Saturday. I hadn't driven in there for 38 years. And it was very, very emotional, in large part because it made me think about my boys, because they're at the age now that I was then. And it made me think about cars, because this house had a very large sort of orchard. And I explained to the people who own it now, and they said, tell me, and they vaguely knew my father. And they said, do you enjoy living here? I said, and I just told them about all the mad antics my brother and I got up to of driving my mother's Fiat 126 through this orchard, pretending that we'd never done it and that all the dents in the bumper was something else had happened. And so this two-car garage question really, really struck home. And I think I've kind of got the two cars already, nearly. So the motivation car, something they can drive on days when they need a boost. It's a sports car, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of predictable, but it is really, really important to me because it's the car more than anything. It changed my life. And that was racing a Caterham 7. It totally changed my life in ways that I would never have imagined, in terms of it was the first thing in my life that allowed me to express in a sort of an unconstrained way who I thought I was and having confidence to do something that I never thought I could do and I never thought I'd be very good at. My boys have been fortunate enough to race Caterham. So I think the first car we'd have, that I'd have, as part of their legacy would be an R400 K series Caterham, the one I had in the 23K shed last week, because that's kind of the closest to the car I had, and the sort of, I know you guys seen this photograph, and everybody else has seen it, but that
He's
Yeah.
holding up a
photograph.
photograph of a Caterham and a 917.
So there's two Gulf-sponsored cars. One is the most famous racing car in the world, and the other one is a 917 driven by Steve McQueen in the American. The other car, because the other car's got to do a few things, hasn't it? And it's more complex because there's lots of things that I think are important and sort of me and so forth. It's the sausage, as Neil very accurately coined it some time ago. My Panamera turbo wagon. It just kind of does everything. It's a bit understated most of the time. It's not the life and soul of the party. But at the right time, in the right circumstances, it carries a very big stick.
Well,
And there are times in my professional life, probably emboldened by the fact that I learned an awful lot about myself racing a car, where I learned how to use a big stick when other times I'd have stayed at the back of the group. So I think an R400 Caterham K Series and a Panamera Turbo, and I got to stop because I got a lump in my throat.
there you go. You stay there. Take a deep breath. We'll go for Neil with an N.
Yes.
And you tell us what two cars you would leave.
Oh, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Crikey. Men doing emotion. What comes next, eh? I have to do two cars that I actually own. And it's funny when you get old, and you've been lucky. Most people you bump into in meetings, they start telling to give all your money away. It's all a bit weird. You work your balls off for 40 years, then you've got to start giving it away. It's all a bit fucked up, really. Anyway, we
We
won't
can help with that.
we won't go down that road. Anyway, I knew that the 991 version of the Porsche was going to be the last really good one. It's a bit bold, isn't it, to say that? So I bought as many as I could, and I kept hold of two. Our lovely friend James at Porsche Swindon, and one of them is a speedster. It's Brewster Green, and I went really quite bonkers with the special witches department, and everything inside is green. Every single thing possible as an option is green leather. And it is the car that if I was, fired, divorced, bankrupt, if every little shitty thing that could happen to me, that would be the last car I'd want to let go, because I put so much effort to it. And my mate Luke came with me, and we went to the factory twice. And, it's an amazing bespoke. It's got green wheels. I mean, it's nuts. And that to me is a car that I hope my kids would understand and keep, and not, sell immediately after my funeral. I hope they would keep hold of it and enjoy it. And then the second car, it's how do I explain this car? It's a Mercedes 300 6.3 estate. It's a car there's only one of them. It was made bespoke by Crayford for Kenneth McAlpine, who's a Formula One racing car driver, Formula One team owner, also was the chief executive at the time, Britain's biggest builder. They built the M25, they built nuclear power stations, they're probably building HS2, proper player, cool family. And I bought it in 1969 for £5,000 from Mercedes, immensely expensive car, and then spent £7,200 upgrading it at Crayford to make it a bespoke car with a sunroof and vinyl roof, but more importantly, made it into an estate car so he could put his wellies and his Alsatian in the back. And to me, that, actually, I bought it very well. It wasn't expensive. I've done the wood, I've done the carpets, I've done mechanically everything. It's an amazing thing. The thing that makes it would remind my kids of me, I hope, is it's quirky. It's if ever a car had ADHD, that's it. So they would remember their dad with that car, and it's done a lot of hard work. It's a bit big. It's fun. It's quite tries to be cool. Tries to stay young, I suppose. You can't stop age, can you? But you've got to try to stop being boring, because you can stop. You can stop that. It's just the age thing you can't stop, and I think that car does all that. And it's lovely, and we'll put a picture up. So they're both green cars, and there's me rattling on about blue, and they're green.
It's lovely again. So Chris and Neil, thank you for that. And managed that. I have to say this without again trying to be the comedian, but the man that owns 2 cars now, what 2 cars are you going to leave to your beautiful son?
Well, actually, I'm going to borrow a car. The inspirational car is actually Darcy's godfather's old car. I think I mentioned on a podcast a while ago that Darcy's godfather is a pediatric plastic surgeon at the Radcliffe. He, when he was a registrar, along with 2 friends, drove from Bristol to Cape Town in a Range Rover Classic, 1995 Range Rover Classic, the long wheelbase, and a beautiful rack which had the tent on the top. So that way they weren't eaten by lions and bitten by scorpions and all the rest of it. And her nickname was Nanny, because at Mary's, where they were all at medical school, they were known as the Goat Men. I'm not going to explain why, and it should just remain unsaid. But on the side of Nanny, who was white, there was a beautiful map of Africa and a goat, and it just said literally, "Go at Africa." And
Wow.
I remember them leaving. We had dinner the night before they left. And actually, another friend of mine randomly had sent me 2 cases of ridiculous Italian wine that they were unable to bring into the US. There were things like, and readers look these up, Poggio Alloro, Sassicaia, Gai Re Langhi. These guys drank basically both these cases of wine. They got into this car and then they drove to Cape Town. And Mark, when he got there, he worked for 6 months for free fixing children's faces. And that's what he does. That's what he does now in the NHS. And I think he's literally the most inspirational sort of doctor I know. It's, he could have been doing boobs and bums and noses and, he could have a private jet, but that's not what he does. What he does is what he believes in, which is being just the best doctor he can be. So that is inspirational. And then obviously it's Lola. You want to leave that one for Darcy, hoping he's not going to sell her 5 minutes after I croak. But you know what she really represents for me is, in a way, the 4 of us. Because what I've loved about this podcast, without being too baby bell and sentimental, is the courage it's given me to find myself in a way. We talk about male mental health. We talk about the fact that men don't talk. But I think, Neil says you were 38 when you bought your first car. How can you be so passionate about cars? It's because I think in some ways I've always been so fantastically repressed about what makes me happy, as opposed to all the people that I encounter. And I think Lola she's such an expression of my joy. I've always loved this car. I probably could have bought this car 10 years ago and I never did. And then, just like a really shaken bottle of champagne, to go and bespoke her in the way that I have. And it's not about the money, it's about the expression. It's about looking at the inside of a car and going, do you know what? I'd like this to be me. And that's what I want. And, I've worked on every detail. I give away a little thing for our viewers. I asked Luca Montemolo when we did that podcast a year and a half ago, when we got Luca somehow under duress to admit that the 456 was a fantastic car, and I said I'd buy one. Well, I asked him if I could put his family crest on the dashboard, and he said, of course. And he gave me a lovely written note that I can put into a folder. And so not only is she mine and spectacular as I would want her to be, she marks, one of the most beautiful chapters in my entire life. Chris and I made a very beautiful movie about Luca. Neil and Chris, the other Chris, turned up to watch it all being shot. And, what a thing for Darshi to remember his old man by. The car that got him, that came from the podcast, the car that the four friends came and, incubated in my mind, and the movie that, in a way, that we made together. So inspiration and daddy, they're the two cars.
That's good.
I don't quite know how to follow any of these, so I'm not going to really attempt to. Don't think we need another long story. It's almost too much. So my children would have the yellow car, obviously. It's I remember the first day they saw it, and two of them went, "Oh, it's yellow." And I went, "Yeah." They went, "Why?" I said, "Because the other one was black. I couldn't get another black one." They went, "Right." And then since then, it's like a Labrador. It's part of the family, and it smells odd, and it's all been chewed by the dog, and they've all sat in the back of it when they probably shouldn't have. And it's an extension of me, isn't it, really? And I think that's what this question asked. This two car garage said, what bit of your DNA, your four-wheel DNA, would you like to leave behind? I don't think I have a legacy in cars. I don't think I'm that important. I don't think the world really gives a shit. But I do think my kids will always associate that weird yellow thing with me. And if I applied the ultimate test, which is if I had to sell it, if I was forced to sell it, what would they think? I think they'd be pretty mortified. And I'd like to think that if it was in a shed somewhere and when I'm gone, each of them now and again will get in it, start it up and go, yeah, we can sense him, we can smell him, we know the dog ate that door bit. And I think that's enough, isn't it? There wouldn't be another car, just be the yellow car, I'm afraid. That would be it. And I'd say to them, keep the oil well and truly topped up. And if anything goes wrong, you phone your Uncle Andreas Poininger at the factory and you remind him to look after you. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. So on that note, let's do a quick bit of music, and then I've got to go. Otherwise, I'm going to get in real trouble. Okay. So let's do a bit of music, starting with let's start with Chris.
I'm not trendy and fashionable and so forth. So my choice this week, I was reminded about it by being back in Kent at the weekend. I used to love "We Close Our Eyes" by Go West.
Oh yes, so did I.
Just, you can't help love that in the car.
It's absolutely fantastic song. Yeah. Okay. I think Manish next, please.
Freedom, George Michael.
Oh, what a track!
Yes.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. And Neil with an N.
Mainly been listening to The Jam on the basis of Rick Buckler. And I realised that, the cocktail of those immensely strong lyrics. I was a bit young to really understand those lyrics, really. You go back and listen to them, much more powerful than you thought when you were 14, at school. Burning Sky, all about long-term friendships and how it can go right and wrong. Brilliant, brilliant song. Off of Setting Suns, I think, album.
I've listened to some Jam this week, but also gone back and listened to some other bands that I loved and I haven't really stayed connected to, one of which is In Excess, which obviously known for that seminal album 87-88 Kick, which was has to be the most famous album cover of those few years.
Yes.
But they were a fantastic band long before that, and their first album was just called In Excess, and the first track on that album is called On a Bus. And I know every single word to that song. I listened to it. First time I listened to it in 25 years, and I could recite every single word. But I couldn't tell you the names of half the people I met last week. Isn't it funny how our sponge-like brains remember things from those parts of our lives? And yet now I couldn't tell you what. Who's that? Neil. I think he's called Neil. So there you go, NXS on a Bus. Go listen to that. It's a cracking tune. That's been yes, an emotional rollercoaster this week. I'm going to go off and dab my eyes and see the people I have to go and see. But thank you so much to my learned colleagues, Manish, Neil, the taller Chris, and from me, the smaller Chris. Thank you for listening.